What's going on, everybody? We have the meta snapshot for patch 13.3. This is a pretty big patch because they introduced the 4 hero augment rerolls, and because of that, there are a couple of new comps in the meta. We point that out in the summary over here. Let's just go over it really quickly. So we've been preparing this pretty diligently because both me and Void Sin both have a tournament this weekend. So we've been trying to grind our butt off, trying to figure out what's best, and we got to talk about it right here. So, but in the S tier, you do need the augment for it, but this Lee Sin comp is so stupid. We'll get into it in just a bit. It's just a completely new comp that people weren't really playing before. After that, we have Samira, as per usual, still the best 4-cost carry. Lasercorps, the best overall comp, but you prefer 7 Lasercorps over 5. And then 9, obviously, is the win out. Kaisa, Recon, classic. Force Viego, also classic. Threats, Bel'Veth is a very, very good carry right now. Misfortune's a little lower than everyone else, and then Yumi's pretty decent if you get the right setup for it. Onto the A tier, we have Jax, Renekton Reroll, another one of those new reroll comps. Soraka, Zoe Reroll, Leblanc Reroll, 4 Ace Mech. Definitely, you prefer the other Samira build that we'll get into later over the mech version now. Super Draven's really, really powerful. The thing about Yuumi and Draven is that if the supers are contested, it's a little tough. That's the only thing you have to look out for. But we'll get into all the details and how to play each and every one of these comps after the summary. Vi Ezreal Reroll. This comp existed before, but we forgot to add it in until now, so we'll just leave it over here. Talon, Vertical Star Guardian, Spellslinger Taliyah, Duelists, MF Mech, Camille Reroll, Sureshot Reroll, Anima Jinx, and finally Gangplank Supers. So a lot of these are augment dependent, but that's kind of the name of the game now. You have to kind of just know which augments are good, and we'll try to cover as many as we can. But in the B tier also, all these are just rerolls. You just need the augment for them, but they're much easier to get now, because if you ever get a 2-1 augment for all these 1-cost rerolls down here, if you have any sort of copies of the unit, you can just keep rerolling and just pray you get it. And it's kind of just flexing around there. Also, if you want to know what's S+, S, S-, A+, A-, because we only have it broken down in S, A, and B tier right now, head on over to this link over here on my website, bunnymuffins.lol/meta, and then you'll find the sub rankings if you subscribe here. But let's move on into how to play each comp. So right now, the Freelo Sin Hearts, that's what we're calling it. It is a 4-heart build. It may look a little bit weird right now, but I promise you everything makes sense later. So you get the augment down here. We always list requirements out for each comp. And you need the Cleansing Safeguard augment. This is the carry Lee Sin one, where he removes negative effects on himself, and it lowers his mana cost for his spell. You just buy Lee Sin, and then you just throw any items you have on him. So if you ever get a 2-cost hero augment on 2-1 or 3-2, you could go ahead and force this if you have any sort of semi-decent tank items, and it's just completely strong. What ends up happening is that Lee Sin just is a heart, right? So whenever he casts, he gives your whole team AP. He'll cast 50 billion times while also not dying because he shields himself the whole time. And then that gives your whole backline a lot of ability power to just clean everyone up. So we have the full how to play section down here. I'll try to play a game of it. I've only played one of it because you need the augment, so it's kind of hard to get. But when I say build any item on Lee Sin, I mean build almost any semblance of a tank item on Lee Sin. So at level 6, you can roll down a bit for the comp we have up here. And then some people like running 2 Lee Sins at level 7. You don't have to. It is definitely really good. We do mention that here. And then after that, you push level 8 or 9 and play random 5 costs such as Urgot and Fiddlesticks. Keep in mind, Urgot gets ability power from the heart buff, and then he farms you a ton of items. So Urgot's definitely really good. Fiddle if you want more combat, because Fiddle gets a lot of AP and then cleans everyone up later on. If you can get Lee Sin 3, great. But you can only do that if you're uncontested, which doesn't really happen. You pretty much always will be contested. If not by Lee Sin players, you'll be contested by the super players. So just settle at playing 2 Lee Sin 2s, and that's good enough, you know? And then in the late game, you could use either Sona or Soraka as your carries. It really doesn't matter who, just whoever you get buffed up a bit. And then, this is going to be your board for a bit, and then you just swap out the units a bit. So Lulu for Soraka, and then you could also take out Blitzcrank because you get admin from Soraka, Yuumi for Syndra, and then just play random legendaries. Just click anything that looks shiny and just put them in, or any random threat units. Just put them all in, and Lee Sin will do the job. You guys might not believe me, but just try it, and you'll see for yourself. I didn't believe it either, but we have a big list of items down here. Titan's Resolve is by far the best item, but literally don't stress on the items. There's much more you could build than what you see here. You could, like, look, Quicksilver's on the list. Like, that's not even a real tank item anymore, but it's just that good on him because it just keeps him casting. But literally anything that resembles a tank item is really good. Like, I've even heard blue buff is really good and a bunch of other random crap as well. For Sona or Soraka, obviously blue buff or Shojin is really good, and then just any generic AP. Hextech Gunblade's good to heal the Lee Sin back up, and then for damage you go Jeweled Gauntlet, Giant Slayer, or like Guard Breaker. But yeah, there are a bunch of augment recommendations down here. Obviously, First Aid Kit is extremely good because you get a shield so often. You want to just maximize that buff. And then hero augments, like you can only play this with Cleansing Safeguard, so that's really the only thing we have here. For counters, pretty much CCing the Lee Sin prevents him from casting and then you just one-tap him. That's really the only way to beat this. And apparently Jinx is good for that. That's the word on the street. So I've never seen it in action, but again, that's the word on the street. Next build up we have is the classic Samira build. Lots of different versions of this comp. This one is the civilian one, but Alistar, Zac, Galio, you could also replace Galio for Echo if you want to run Aegis. If you have a lot of magic damage in your game, you could run 2 Sureshot, you could run 4 Sureshot, lots of different options here. The only thing you absolutely need, as per usual, is the Last Whisper on Samira. Nothing's changed about this comp, so if you guys watch any of the previous videos, this comp plays almost exactly the same. You could even play it with the mech if you just happen to get a free mech. Like, let's say you get set 2 for free. Some games that happens, especially nowadays because set's not really contested. Of course, you could replace your whole front line for that. So always keep different outs in mind because the front line is really flexible and like you don't need 4 Sureshot. You could run like Aurelion Sol, Urgot, or something instead of Senna and Sivir. Lots of different things you could do, and like also other stuff before Ophelio. So this comp is like pretty flexible in terms of the units. It's really just Samira plus at least 2 Sureshot and then a bunch of tanks and whatever synergies you could fill in. But yeah, you want to fast 8 with this because you need a lot of expensive units. Next build up we have is the Lasercorps Zed. Lasercorps is definitely like a mainstay comp right now, and it's especially good if you ever get like Lasercorps Heart, Lasercorps Crest, Lasercorps Crown. Any of the Lasercorps emblem things just like accelerate this comp to like the next level essentially. Like it actually bumps it up a tier. Some people have been asking me like, was this Lasercorps better than the old Lasercorps? Essentially they smoothed the curve. But right now, I think it is slightly better because you could stabilize at 5 Lasercorps, which is weaker than 6, obviously, the old 6 Lasercorps, but it's a lot easier to attain. So there's always trade-offs in pretty much everything in life. TFT is included in that. After that, you have a better power spike at 7 Lasercorps compared to 6. So your early to mid game is a lot better. Your mid game slightly weaker, but then your mid to late game is much better also. So there are a lot of different things to kind of consider here. The only requirements is like an Edge of Night. Ionic or Static Shiv is also pretty good, and then Lasercorps Emblem definitely bumps it up a tier as we said before. And yeah, going 9 Lasercorps, it's always like a chance to get top 1 or 2. And apart from that, if you just play the regular Lasercorps, you go like 4th or 5th or whatever with 7 Lasercorps. And then the times you do hit the 9 Lasercorps, you just get 1st or 2nd. So on average, if you play like 10 games of this, you should be climbing at least if you like play it in the right spots, obviously. But onto the next build we have is the Kaisa Recon build. Nothing really changed here. You just want to econ up, play for Kaisa. You could build Gunblade. I don't personally like Gunblade, but Voidsin does like Gunblade. And Gunblade's really good if you're flexing into the comp because you could just slam Gunblade and then pivot out if you get contested, for example. But for me, I like building a couple other items instead, but all these are really good. The only thing I'd say is required is the Static Shiv or Ionic Spark because you really need that magic resist reduction on your Kaisa. After that, you need your spell to critically strike, so you could get that from either having 4 Recon or having a Jeweled Gauntlet or getting the Jeweled Lotus Augment. Any one of those conditions is fine. Just make sure you don't like double up on them, for example. A couple of different versions of this comp as well. Some people like playing it with Nyla, some people like playing it with like Fiddlesticks or Urgot or Zac. Other people like playing it with the Nyla Echo combo to get Star Guardian for your Kaisa. It really depends if you have Vayne items. So if you don't have Vayne items, I typically don't like running Nyla. But if you do have Vayne items, then getting Duelists is pretty good, obviously. Sometimes hero augments are really weird. Like if you get a 5/5/5 hero augment, you need to run some sort of legendary unit. Just pick Fiddlesticks or Urgot and just throw them in and kind of pray after that. There's also like a lot of different variations if you get like Double Trouble. Double Trouble is like pretty good with this comp. So I have a game example of that over here. But yeah, this comp is just pretty solid. It's the same as before. You just need good frontline to buy time for Kaisa to ramp up, and then they pretty much kill everything. So for the augments, Triforce obviously really good. Double Trouble, as we talked about before. Healing is really nice, having like a tiny bit, so if you don't have like the Gunblade, getting Celestial Blessing is really good. Jeweled Lotus if you don't want to run 4 Recon, so you could drop Ashe for something else. Second Wind because we want tanks. Pandora's Bench is good for econing. Also, like all the econ augments at 2-1 are pretty good, so if you get like consistency, if you get calculated loss, things like that work too. Cybernetic Implants is decent if you itemize a lot of people. Same with Uplink. There are a lot of different things that work with this comp, but yeah. For hero augments, the best one is Ezreal's Raider Spoil. The Kaisa ones are pretty good, but I kind of prefer getting like a 2-cost one instead. Of course, sometimes you don't have the choice and like you have to pick the 3. And yeah, the Kaisa ones are pretty good. And then for Vayne, Spread Shot is really good if you itemize your Vayne. If not, go for Edge of Night or Into the Night and put the Edge of Night onto your Kaisa. Onto the next build we have is the Force Viego. So Viego, it's kind of like a 1st or 8th comp. If you get Viego 2, it's very, very powerful. If you're Viego 1, you're going to be hard stuck for a while. So if you kind of like wild swings, you don't like playing for like the top 4 playstyle, you want to just win or lose, Force Viego is like the comp for you. Gunblade and Ionic Spark are the 2 most important items. Everything else does not matter. You pretty much build those 2 items and then just any 3rd Viego item. We have the items again down here probably. Yeah, we have a couple options here. And then after that, you just build utility on the rest of your team. So some form of anti-heal, either a Sunfire Cape on Alistair or a Morello on Fiddlesticks. You could do like a Redemption, Shrouds, Zephyrs, like literally anything. And then also in your late game cap out, you could itemize your Aphelios and he could crank as well. For this, since it's 1st or 8th, you want to fast 8, essentially because you need all the expensive units. Even though there's only one 4 cost that you really care about, it matters a lot. So you just need to do everything in your power to get a Viego 2. And also, if you ever get any emblems such as Oxforce or Renegade, you could go for 6 Renegade or like 8 Oxforce. Those are really powerful. You could just play like Belveth or Misfortune with any of those emblems and do pretty well. On to the next build, we have Threats. So Threats is just Belveth plus anything. You don't have to play the Threats. We've been over this before, but pretty much any comp you saw before that we just looked over, if there's like a spatula for some of those comps, for example, like Lasercorps, Oxforce, Viego, Renegade, like you could just play Belveth in any one of those comps, like Anima Squad that we'll get into right after this. And you could play their front line instead of the threat front line and you'll do pretty well. But if you ever get threat level maximum, like just play this board and like you'll just print LP essentially. But Belveth, very powerful on this patch, flexes into any comp and it's just kind of, you have to use your brain a little bit when you're flexing, but you know, sometimes you have to do that when you play TFT. But it's very, very strong. Belveth shouldn't be this strong because as a threat unit, like you get the added flexibility. So she shouldn't be like as powerful as the other 4-cost carries in my opinion. But just play her now because like this is the strongest she's ever been. Next comp up we have is the Misfortune Anima Squad. This one is a little funky because Misfortune's a little troll sometimes. She's either the best unit in the game or the worst unit in the game. You kind of flip a coin every time she ults, but on average, I'd say she's pretty good. The only thing you need to complement her is some form of magic resist reduction, either in an Ionic Spark or a Static Shiv. If you have Static Shiv, I like putting it on either Jinx or Vayne. And also the Jinx augments are really, really powerful right now. If you have Ionic Spark, like Riven or Fiddlesticks work, or any of your random tanks that you end up getting if you get a lot of Anima Spatulas, for example. Sylas is a great item holder in the early game, so definitely use him to hold a lot of your tank items, and Jinx is pretty good for holding MF items. After that, like, this comp is pretty augment dependent, so if you ever, like, alone, without any good augments, this comp is kind of mediocre. It might be like A+, A, maybe even A-. But with Anima Squad augments, it becomes automatically like S, maybe even S+, because you get to run a lot of good units, and anyone can make use of Anima Squad Spatula because it gives AP, AD, and health. So some champion's going to find some use of it. So that means you automatically get a 2-star copy of that champion, whoever you're putting the spatula on. It could be an Urgot, it could be a Fiddlesticks, it could be a Belveth, it could be a Aurelion Soul, it could be an Echo. Like literally anyone you get 2-star, just drop it on them and you won't regret it. The best one's obviously Urgot, but you know, we can't pick and choose. And because you could put that on pretty much anyone, that's why the comp is so good right now. Some of the hero augments are really strong too. Like both MF augments are pretty good. And then I think it's called Reverberation on Riven. It's the one where you get her to like cast a shield on someone else. I believe it's called Reverberation. And in those games where you get it, you could do like a reroll Riven strategy. And if you ever get Riven 3-star with that augment, it's just like a free win pretty much. Not a free win, but like at least top 2. Onto the next build we have is the Yummi Reroll. So Yummi Reroll is very hit or miss right now. How do I say this? Like, with the hero augment changes, getting the Yuumi augments, it actually isn't good to have. So 2-cost augments are actually pretty bad for Yuumi. And the reason why is because it means other people are going for supers reroll. So people are going to look for Lee Sin, cleansing, safeguard augments. People are going to look for the Draven augments and reroll Draven and take your supers as well. I believe like the Ezreal Vi build also tries to take supers. So if you ever get like a non-2-cost champion augment game, Yuumi becomes a lot better. So that's why when you look at the stats or whatever, the Yuumi augments actually perform pretty badly. And the reason why is for what I just said, because she really relies on the supers damage. And if they're contested, it's pretty bad news, right? But in other situations, if you ever hit the comp, you are just like completely set. It is so powerful and she just wipes through everyone. But make sure you just hit everything. I know it's easier said than done, but the way to do that is have at least one econ augment. No more, no less, just one econ augment, and then you should be able to hit the comp. After that, go for combat augments that just improve your team. So you should have like 2 combat augments and 1 econ augment, and that should be good enough to hit this comp more often than not. Onto the next tier, we have the A tier. So there's a pretty big drop between the S and the A tier, in my opinion. Like, I don't think Jax is that great. Most of the playable comps right now are in the S tier, because I think we went over like, how many did we go over? We went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 comps. Normally we don't have that many in the S tier. So Jax definitely is a step lower than everything else right now. But he's still okay if you get a lot of bows early with the Brawler start, and like maybe you get like a great augment on 2-1. So that goes for like a lot of the other A tier comps because it's just that specific right now. Because they changed how the hero rerolls work, it's like very particular with a lot of these comps. Combine that with the Jax buffs, he's like not that bad right now. But yeah, RFC is the most important item on him. Like pretty much I wouldn't try playing this comp without an RFC. So it could be annoying to get like 3 bows for this guy because you also want a Rage Blade. Overall, you just kind of play him like how you did before, and that's pretty much all there is to it. You just try to stabilize at 6 Brawler at 3-2 or 4-1, and pretty much just go from there. Eventually, like you could go up to 8 Brawlers with like Brawler augments, but you generally just stay at 6 and then just drop some of the weaker Brawlers. You could just fill those slots with legendary units such as like Fiddle Urgot, like the usual suspects. If you guys haven't noticed the pattern yet, Fiddle Urgot fits in pretty much every comp, which makes sense, right? Because they're threat legendaries. Onto the next build we have is the Renekton Reroll. So only take this if you get, what's it called? Reign of Anger. Yeah. Do not do this with any other augment because, yeah. But if you do get it, it's one of the most powerful comps, and you could really fish for it really hard on 2-1 because you have 4 hero reroll augments, and there are going to be a lot of comps like this. So this is the build. Since there are a lot of builds like this, I'm just going to tell you like fish for the augment, then roll for what you see on the board here. Obviously, you could pick up Blitzcrank 3, along with the Renekton 3, but you just play Brawlers. It's pretty much the same board as the Jax board. You add in like Soraka later, except this time you're just relying on your Renekton to kind of beef everyone up. Of course, check out all the recommended items we have down here. A lot of different things can work on Renekton, but Titan's Resolve is going to be the best item. Next build up we have is the Soraka Carry. So Soraka and other like caster comps, a little weaker right now because a lot of people were experimenting with the new Gadgettine, and 5 Gadgettine is a little ambitious. I don't think it's that strong. We don't have it in our comp list this week. Maybe we'll add it later on, but I think just like running 3 Gadgettines, you pretty much just play the AP comps the same way you did in all the other patches, but just think of them as like a little bit stronger right now because if you do happen to run Gadgettine, this board we are not, but let's say you had like some sort of spatula item and then you add in a Nunu, you could fit it in here and then you just play it with that slight added bonus. At the end of the day, all you're really playing is a Soraka build with some tanks, but I would only go for these comps if you get a lot of tiers. I typically only do Soraka Carry if I go for like a tier start and then finish my blue buff on the 2-5 carousel. But again, other item recommendations down here, how to play section over here, all on the website bunnymuffins.lol. Next build up we have is Zoe Reroll, very similar to the Soraka comp. Here you could try to play the 5 Gadgettine if you ever get like the Gadgettine heart or something like that, or if you're running like Poppy augments, because Poppy augments make your board so strong, and she can kind of carry on her own with like other builds complementing her, such as fitting her in a Zoe Reroll, go 3 to 5 Gadgettine, and call it a day from there. Zoe can build a lot of different items. If she's your primary carry, you could do 3 items with a Morello or without a Morello. What I like to do is have blue buff and then either Morello or Gunblade and then 1 other damage item. The last damage item doesn't really matter, but I typically don't like blue buff, Morello, and Gunblade all at once. A little bit nitpicky, but it is like, you do have to point it out because they don't really synergize together that well. You could also just let Zoe be a Morello bot and then focus on Soraka Carry and then kind of play this comp the same way as you did the comp up here. Lots of different options, so you have to kind of see when you can re-roll for Zoe 3 and when you cannot. But even though in the super late game, Morello's not that great on her because you'd rather have like triple damage item, it stabilizes you a lot in the mid game. So if you're in the mid game, slam this item. But if you're in the late game, something like a Hextech Gunblade or maybe a Rabadon's Death Cap could do a little bit better, or like a Guard Breaker. Guard Breaker is actually really good on Zoe because she always has a spell active on the enemy tank. So whenever they shield, you just get the damage buff right away. Next build up we have is the Leblanc Reroll. So this one's with threats, but you could do it in all the other versions we saw up here because we do play LeBlancs in these other versions. But threats is really good because you have a lot of 3-cost units you could kind of roll for simultaneously. Just look at this right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different units you could roll for. So instead of having like the Annie, Echo, Alistair frontline, you have like the Cho'Gath, Rammus, and it just is kind of the same as like the Kaisa board, but you're just running LeBlanc instead. Pretty solid comp, but only do it after you check your admin. You do want like a good admin for LeBlanc. What are those? Okay, so the good admins are going to be like anything that gives AP, stuff that gives mana, or stuff that gives stacking health to LeBlanc if you get an early copy of LeBlanc, because that way she just becomes super beefy and not many people can kind of touch her. Next build up we have is the 4 Ace Mech. This is MF carry with 4 aces. It's a very high roll because it's hard to get Mordekaiser for the 4 aces. I don't really recommend going for Ace Emblem and then trying to force this comp. If you are playing this comp already and then you happen to get an Ace Emblem, then like good for you. Then pick it up, obviously. But if you're trying to like force this from 2-1, it's just not recommended. Did that really make sense? I hope it did. If not, just like ask in the comments, I'll try to clarify. But essentially, like this is a comp that you kind of fall into. You don't like go for it right away. And again, it's really because it's mech reliant. You just need 2-star set, especially with the nerfs. Like even before the nerfs, 1-star set wasn't that great. And then after the nerfs, like you just need the 2-star set. I don't know what else to say. You also need perfect items on set and perfect items on MF to really make this work. But if you do get it, this comp has a very, very high cap. So you have a lot of room to get first place compared to even the S tier comps we covered before. The reason why this is an A tier isn't because it isn't strong, it's just because it's harder to get. So whenever we rank compositions in TFT, it's always a mix of how strong they are and also how easy they are to play. Not how easy to play, but like how easy they are to get in your game. Draven Reroll is a great example to explain this. So if you are contested Draven Reroll, you might as well just forfeit the game or move into another comp. You have those 2 options. Because Draven Reroll, when contested, one of those players is going to go like 7th or 8th place because they're not going to hit Draven 3. Or they do hit it, but it's already too late and other teams scaled too hard already, and then you just die from 1 hit. You also really want the hero augment on Draven, so you can't really go for this build every game, even though you might see Draven Reroll win a lot of games. So just because it wins a lot of games doesn't make it a good comp, because sometimes it is just difficult to get games to play this build. The only tricky thing about this comp, it's actually like not that hard to play, but you just need to know how to stabilize on 3-2, and that's always going to be a judgment call. You have to balance it between the gold in your bank plus whatever upgrades you hit, but you definitely need at least this board you see here, and preferably Draven 2-star. But the decision starts to come when you're like, oh, I have everything 2-star except for my Draven, and I have like 30 gold. Like, do I roll? Do I not roll? Those are going to be your decision points. In the scenario I just outlined, like I'd probably not roll, but it's going to change depending on how strong all your enemies are. A lot of things in TFT is relative, because I do see a lot of questions where people say like, hey, I hit the board, but I still lost with it. Like, what's up with that? The comp sucks or something like that. And then other times you're like, wait a minute, I won with the reroll comp even though I didn't get a 3-star. The reason why this happens is because, one, there's like RNG in the game in terms of like matchup RNG. Maybe you just faced the weakest person in the game every single fight. But there's also like the tempo of the game. So how strong everyone else is. Sometimes some games where you have like a lot of econ augments in the early, people are really weak, but then like in the late game they're like super strong, and then they just like 10-0 other boards, and then the game kind of ends like abruptly, even though a lot of people had kind of high health. So it really depends on that, and you just have to scout to figure that out every game. Ezreal Vi Reroll, we added this comp because we forgot to before, but it's really just focused on supers, Ezreal and Vi. And you only play this with Rising Spell Force on Ezreal or the Unrelenting Force on Vi, which are both their carry augments. Ironically, they both look very similar, like they have the same color hair, and a lot of people can't tell the difference between their portraits. I've heard that before, but yeah, they also need both carry augments to run the same exact build, and that's really all you need to know here. Like, we have the items laid out down here. You don't need perfect best in slots, but like blue buff is the only required item on Ezreal, and then like Titan's Resolve, extremely good on Vi. But if you have 3 solid tank items that are not Titan's Resolve, like you'll be doing fine. You could also use the Vi carry augment to kind of tempo into other boards, but I feel like if you are able to hit the 3-star Vi, it's definitely well worth it. Next build up we have is a Talon Reroll. You pretty much only play this with Edgelord or with like one of the Silas carry augments. I think it's called Kingslayer. And you play it the same way you would play a Talon. Another time you could play this is if you just get a lot of copies of Talon, and then you just itemize both Talon and your Viego that you play in the regular Oxforce build. It's a little tricky to balance sometimes because you need a lot of items to make that work, because you need like tank items and damage items. But remember when we looked at the Oxforce build? Let's go there for a second right now. I told you guys to itemize Viego first and then use utility items on everyone else. You don't need like pure tank items such as Bramble Vest. You don't need pure tank items such as like Dragon Claw. But let's say you get like all offensive items, then like the Talon Reroll build kind of does a lot of work there because you have enough items for both your Viego and your Talon. Well, let's move on into the next comp, which is the Vertical Star Guardian. By the way, you could always click on the summary here just to like zoom directly to the comp. But on Vertical Star Guardian, this one is just a Taliyah build. I typically don't like mana items whenever I play a lot of Star Guardians, but if I'm running only like 3 Star Guardian, then I typically do like a mana item. But really, I wouldn't stress too much about it. You just need to slam items as early as possible whenever you're playing AP, because you just need to not die and kind of like let everyone else bleed out. So when do you want to play the Vertical Star Guardian comp versus the Taliyah one? Sometimes if you get a lot of bows and you can't really complete them, it's good to go for the Vertical Star Guardian comp because you could kind of itemize Kaisa. One time I was playing Recon and then I merged into this 7-star Guardian comp because I was kind of contested. So I did not get my Kaisa 3, I was just sitting at Kaisa 2, and then I was like, hey, wait a minute, let's just play 7-star Guardian instead of all the Recon units, and then that kind of worked out pretty well. Taliyah carry, you just kind of play it the same way you do Soraka, but if you hit Soraka or Taliyah, you just play whoever you get first to 2-star, and then so you kind of just swap between the 2 builds there, because they run the same front line of Echo, Annie, and Alistair. They both also run Sona, and you could also run LeBlanc here for more Spellslinger, so there are a lot of different options there, and these 2 comps, or like 3 comps that I'm talking about, are kind of all the same. Duelists definitely are a lot weaker now. Some people have asked me, like, is this still a free top 4? I would say no right now, and it's pretty augment dependent. You'd much rather just play Lasercorps because they use the same items and like they share a lot of units, and it's just a much better build. But if you happen to like start the game with a Locket and like 4 Duelists, like go ahead, sure, go for this. But apart from those like very specific scenarios, I would kind of avoid the Duelist comp. But like we have the 2-hour guide here, so I'll let you guys check that out if you are new to this. But onto the next build we have is the Misfortune Mech. This one is just similar to the 4 Ace build, but instead of running 4 Aces because it's very hard to hit, you just run random good units. So Belveth, obviously, and then the other 2 legendaries, and then just like as much frontline as you can to buy as much time for MF as possible. Really good with Ascension because we're running like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks essentially, and I guess like the mech counts as like 3 in 1, right? But essentially it's just like a very, very strong comp that just kind of delays time. Again, the power of this comp is that you don't need to like force it. If you're going for like the other mech builds, you could kind of flex into this because obviously Misfortune probably works better in a Anima squad comp. But onto the next build we have is the Camille Reroll. Only do this with a good admin, so anything with attack damage is going to help her a lot. And then Bloodthirster Titans are the 2 best items on her, and then IE, very powerful for her spell to crit. If you do end up hitting the comp, you do have to scout a lot because you need to hack her into the right spots. So just look for the enemy carries every single round and just like hack her over to their carries, and hopefully you one-tap them at the start of the fight. But yeah, very powerful comp, very good for getting first place because of that. But it's just a little tricky to navigate and very particular in terms of what you need. Hero Augment, obviously very welcome, but you don't have to have it. Next build up we have is a Sureshot Reroll. This is Sivir and Senna Reroll. It's a little risky right now because, again, like the supers, they're all taken every single time there's a 2-cost augment out. So do you want to risk that? Not really, because there are better reroll comps using the same supers. Like both Draven and Yuumi are both better than this comp. So I generally wouldn't play this unless you like know for sure you're uncontested on the supers. Jinx Reroll, very, very like sleeper OP right now. I think both Jinx augments are pretty good right now because you just play either the regular Anima or you reroll for Jinx 3, and she actually does stuff now after they change it. So yeah, you just play it just like how you do for any other 2-cost reroll comp. Just roll at level 6 for Jinx, and you could also pick up Sylas and Nasus 3 on your way down if you get a lot of copies of them. If not, don't worry too much about it. Once you hit Jinx 3, just level up and play other stuff. You could also just play the regular Anima Squad version with MF and everything and just have the Jinx augment. That works fine too. But the Jinx 3 is pretty powerful if you do want to go for it. Gangplank Supers, this only works with Flaming Ricochet. You have to be very careful when playing this because, again, if other people are going for supers, you cannot play this comp because they will take all your Gangplanks. Actually, maybe it's not that bad because most supers players, they always get Malphite 3 and Lee Sin 3, but they don't get Gangplank 3 often. So maybe you can sneak out a Gangplank 3, but I'm telling you, even when contested, like you could still play it sometimes because Flaming Ricochet is just that strong right now. For items, it's just blue buff plus anything. I'd say blue buff is the only like required build. I think probably Titans is the best, and then some form of healing, either a Hodge or a Gunblade will do. Onto the B tier now. These are all like the same rerolls, so I'm not going to go over them too deeply. Just pretty much whatever cost they are, just follow the same reroll pattern as we've been doing since like set 1, and you'll be pretty much set from there. Just copy the boards here and just roll for them at like whenever I tell you guys to. Like this one I say level 5 and then push to level 6 for other stuff. But yeah, same goes for Kale. Also, like for these comps, you could fish for them at 2-1 if you get the hero augment on 2-1. And that's really how you're going to decide whether you go for these comps or not. If you don't have those augments, just like don't do it at all. And of course, even if you do want to reroll on a 2-1 augment, there are better ones that we like went over already. So that's going to be like a personal choice whether you want to go for these comps or the better ones that we saw before. I want to go on to the items now because it's pretty important stuff. Right now, I think the best is Bow, but there's still a little bit of flavor depending on what comps you like. Void likes Belt a lot, but I think Rod's the second best, but different opinions for different people. They're both very fine items. Pretty much Bow is like S+, Belt and Rod are maybe S, and then after that it's like anything goes, and then just don't get Glove or Cloak. So I would prioritize getting any of these top ones rather than fighting for the Bow or the Belt or Rod, just to guarantee not getting a cloak or a glove. That's probably what I would do at the carousels at the start of the game if I were you, but of course, if there are very specific comps you like to play, like if you like playing mech a lot, then cloak's gonna be pretty good. So even though it's low on the tier, if you like playing mechs, just like go for the cloak, it's fine, you know? But that's hopefully gonna help you guys climb this week. I know we were late on the meta snapshot because we normally post on Fridays, and past couple weeks we've been a little delayed, but that's because like the patch cycle has been delayed a little bit. So it's a little tricky to kind of judge that. So we wanted to give like a little more time for the meta to develop, and that's why we waited till Saturday to post. But we do have it now. So in summary, like some augments are broken, abuse them. We went over them already. And then like Samira is still the best comp. So just look out for that. It's just Samira plus random tanks that you get. And watch us this weekend on Twitch. Twitch.tv/BunnyMuffinsLOL. I'll have like the banner up on the top right. I know some people have found that kind of cool. But yeah, that's gonna be it from us today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and I hope to see you all like on my stream. But if not, like that's cool too. Not everyone's got time to like watch video games, you know. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.